Late breaking news. Neil has just finished his climb up Mount Kilimanjaro. Well done, Neil. Absolutely well done. You're a better man than I.
Scanning for audio.
Welcome once again to the Tin Dog Podcast. And as always, I'd like to thank everyone who's been emailing me with their thoughts and comments about the Tin Dog Podcast. I'd also like to thank everyone for being nominated for the second year running to be in the running for a Parsec Award. So whoever put me up for that, I thank you from the bottom of my MP3 recorder. Cheers. I also received a rather curious bit of feedback on the last Bigfinish Roundup. It's from Mike Carter, and he wasn't particularly impressed with the whole Bigfinish Roundup thing. Well, I'm sorry to say for him, but not for everyone who likes them, this is another Bigfinish Roundup, covering the end of the Paul McGann season and release 121, Enemy of the Daleks. Mike suggests that I do a little bit of research before I do a podcast, and trust me, I kind of do, so that I know what I'm talking about, before I try and become, and I quote, an obsessive fan that tries to speak for the rest of us. I'm not trying to speak for anyone. I'm just some guy talking about Doctor Who, and you're just someone who listens. It's just an audio blog. It's really not worth getting that excited about. So no matter what people say, I'm definitely not the voice of fandom.
WhoCast listeners are also Tin Dog listeners as well. It's always a pleasure to listen to what he has to say, because he really makes you think.
Besides you, obviously, Trev, and me perhaps sometimes, I think Tin Dog is the voice of Doctor Who.
Oh, yes. You can just
man.
imagine, yeah. If Doctor Who had a voice of opinion, then Tin Doggy is the one, yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry, what was that? A section from the WhoCast? Yeah, let's just leave it there, shall we? Crashing on. I also want to thank the people who've emailed me saying how much they're looking forward to the Hoovers event in Derby later on this year in September. Again, there'll be a link on my website to that one-day convention, and I am looking forward to seeing all of you there. There'll be more podcasters in one room than you can shake a stick at. One carefully placed bit of poison, and you could take out, well, quite a vocal amount of fandom. Also, before I start work on the exciting world that is Bigfinish, I just want to say that I received the press release for the new Torchwood. Now, as of today, the rumour is that it's going to start on the 6th or 7th of next month, which will be very nice, because I think that's the day the soundtrack album comes out. Whether that's true or not, I'm sure you'll know by the time you hear this podcast. Here's the trailer.
There's one thing I always meant to ask Jack. Back in the old days, I wanted to know about that doctor of his. The man who appears out of nowhere and saves the world, except sometimes he doesn't. All those times in history when there was no sign of him, I wanted to know why not. But I don't need to ask anymore. I know the answer now. Sometimes the Doctor must look at this planet and turn away in shame. I'm recording this in case anyone ever finds it, so you can see. You can see how the world ended.
At this point, I did intend reading the Torchwood Children of Earth press release, but, and I know you won't hear this very often, the cat ate my press release. I've saved quite a bit of it, and assembled it and used sticky tape. Good Lord, the professionality of this guy. What more do we need? In all honesty, it doesn't really say that much. It basically says, Torchwood's coming back. Well, we knew that. We still don't have a release date, an official one, as of yet. We do know when the DVD's due out, and in that case the Blu-ray as well. and in that the Blu-ray as well, which would be very nice for all of you people with gloriously high def stuff. It'll have the Torchwood declassified stuff as its DVD extras, and it looks like the Blu-ray is going to have exactly the same format. The only thing worthy of note is that the aliens, or creatures, appear to be called 456. I guess that's because 5, 6, 7, 8 jazz hands might just be a little bit too camp. Yeah, that joke probably worked more in my head than it did on audio. Shall we leave it there and crash on? I suspect so.
Doctor Who, Enemy of the Daleks.
One of the worst atrocities committed during the Dalek Wars happens at this research facility. Here, now. The sort I never wanted either of you to witness. I'm sorry. You're part of a Valkyrie unit?
Yes. Never heard of them.
An all-female fighting force created to combat the most dangerous, most malevolent alien species ever to attack mankind.
Oh no, don't say it.
Say what?
What he's about to say.
And what's he about to say?
Daleks.
Attention! All humans on the planetoid designated Bliss will surrender to Dalek forces or face extermination.
Professor, listen to me. The Daleks will have control of this sector within days, if not sooner. Either you come with us, or you'll die here.
In years to come, you'll be able to say you are here to witness the birth of a new species. Behold the Doctor! Behold the savior of mankind!
You wasted that brilliance on an act of madness. And that madness endangers every life form in the galaxy.
I've had enough, alright? I've seen and heard more people die today than in my whole life, and I've had enough!
Ace Hex, try to understand. What's about to happen will happen, has happened, must happen. I've been searching for my part in these events ever since we landed here.
Have mercy, Doctor. Exterminate me. Exterminate me!
This year Bigfinish are doing seasons, collections of stories, all to do with one Doctor, released in lumps. For example, the Key to Time season. And now, the Sylvester McCoy one. Release number 121 is Enemy of the Daleks. Now the problem with the Daleks, and I know lots of people are Dalek fans, especially on the audio, is that, well, in order to placate us older fans, you really need to look at the Daleks in a slightly new way every time you bring them back. Give us a new way of looking at something. Now, unfortunately, the Daleks are, well, fairly two-dimensional. They're basically Nazis. That's how they were originally designed and seen, and that's what we've got. It's one of the reasons we love them. We know exactly what we're getting. One of the examples of how things have moved around and changed to present us with something new was Jubilee, or even Brotherhood of the Daleks, the last major Dalek story. But here we've gone back to basics. We've looked at Daleks, gone back to basically just having a story that takes place at some point in a Dalek war. Now, I'm not as familiar with the Dalek Empire stories as I'd like to be, but that's hardly a crime. This story doesn't even need to exist within a larger narrative. It does seem, or have the feel, of a story that takes place within the Virgin Books range. Now, I know Hex as a character didn't appear in the Virgin Books, but here we have an Ace which is much more developed and much more darker. We have a very, very manipulative Seventh Doctor. And we also have some reasonable character development on the part of Hex. You can't really call it a romp. The Doctor turns up with something to do, as the Seventh Doctors often want to do, in order to commit, well, something that needs to take place during the war. Of course, it's got classic themes like, how do you create a monster to kill a monster without becoming a monster? And that sort of thing which Doctor Who has always dealt with, going back to, well, the first Doctor. We know the Seventh Doctor is an interfering old devil, and here, as always, it does seem to get slightly out of hand. There are some lovely little touches, like the brand new alien race, the giant, scary locust creatures, and my personal favourite, the Valkyrie units. All very well drawn, action-packed. It is possibly the most visual Doctor Who story in some time. It's not the sort of story you'll listen to over and over again, but if you do own it, you will be going back to it, and you won't be disappointed. Before I move on to reviewing the end of the Paul McGann season, here's a word from a voice you probably recognise.
I'm Barry Scott.
Ooh, that was a bit noisy. Hello, this is a promo for the Flash and Blade podcast. I'm Tony, and this is my plucky girl assistant, Jo.
Hello.
That was a bit breathy Kensington Miss, wasn't it?
Hello.
Anyway, what do we do? What do we talk about?
Oh, we talk about stuff and things.
And things?
Yeah, in equal measures.
Stuff and things. Doctor Who, science fiction, all sorts of silly stuff like that, but mainly Doctor Who, because it's my obsession. I'm the ancient wise one, and Jo knows, well, bugger all really about it.
I'm the plucky one, apparently, allegedly.
Yes, she's very, very, very plucky. We get Jo's completely fresh views on all sorts of things to do with Doctor Who, and my ancient, ingrained, indefinable magic views. So that's the Flash and Blade podcast, available from www.flashandblade.org.uk, iTunes, Podcast Alley, blah, 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 blah. That's the end of this promo. Toodles!
Bye!
Scapegoat is the 5th story in the 3rd season of 8 Doctor and Lucy stories. Sounds slightly more complicated than it is.
Doctor Who, the Scapegoat.
Bonjour, monsieur!
Oh. It's not a question of whether or not he lives. It's a question of whether or not he's still in one piece once they've finished with him at Rue Fort.
Oh, thanks, moustache. After him! On foot, you fools! He's getting away!
Paris?
Assurément. Voilà.
La douche écossaise. The hot and cold shower. The comedy before the tragedy. No, the doctor. My doctor.
You can't leave.
She'll be screaming soon enough.
Massive power source is dragging us out of the sky.
You maniac! It's all gone wrong! He's dead!
A member of the German High Command was murdered by persons unknown.
You screamed beautifully, my dear.
By way of reprisal, I have ordered once more that 50 hostages be shot.
My love! I am not deserving of this gesture.
No! I want this aircraft found and its crew apprehended.
Is something the matter?
No, really.
Prisoner of the Gestapo. I think I feel a new play coming on.
You and Bleeding McGregor!
It is time for my date with Madame Guillotine!
Bigfinish.com.
Narratively speaking, Scapegoat is very good, and as always my problem with the 8th Doctor stories is, well, they're just not long enough. Some of the stories in this season have felt, if not rushed, then squeezed in. Some people may refer to this as padding being removed. Well, I suppose you do have an argument for that sort of thing, but, well, I'm sure we can let them off. This story does, however, have Samantha Bond in it. Now, we all know her perhaps a little bit too much for her parts in the Sarah Jane stories. The recurring villain in that is very, very well drawn. But here, this story has more of the feel of human nature. More specifically, the family of blood, rather than anything exciting happening to the Doctor. Yes, it's Nazi war-torn Paris. And yes, if these aliens existed on TV, I'm sure people would complain about how ludicrous they look. But as always, these work on audio. It's not my favourite of the season so far, but it is by no stretch of the imagination a bad thing. And before I move on to the cannibalists, here's a word from Staggering Stories.
There are podcasts, and there are podcasts, and Staggering Stories is one of those podcasts. Listen to our in-depth and comprehensive reviews.
I really liked it.
Be in awe of our witty repartee.
You're idiots.
Cower before the might of El Presidente.
I shall have them all executed, but I'm drifting.
Marvel at the thoughts of the head of Pertwee. Staggering Stories. I like it, but I don't know why.
Can I have a glass of water, please? This voiceover's killing my throat.
The Cannibalists is a much more fun piece of audio. It has the feel of a second Doctor story. And yes, yet again, the characters, if they existed on screen, might be laughable. The design that's implied is, well, frankly ludicrous. But on audio, they're great.
Doctor Who, the Cannibalists.
What do you think, Lucy? First impressions?
Hey! Let me up! Humans! They could be humans!
The elevator is ready to depart.
Doctor! What kind of fried designation is that?
And would you mind keeping your pincers off?
They call me the Mighty Titus.
Titus.
As you do well to remember for when you want to beg for mercy.
Whoa! We're in outer space.
And observe, the organic has unorthodox protrusions.
Well, I've never heard them called that before.
A liquid vascular system. What sort of robot are you?
Robots?
Yes, robots.
Doctor, if you're not a robot, what are you?
Oi! And hands off, you big hoover.
A star city.
That's more like it.
We're not alone.
I thought you said there was no one here.
I said there were no traces of life.
You will be able to give us instructions on how to save the haven.
Bigfinish.com.
The Doctor and Lucy materialise in a good old-fashioned 2000 AD-like space station. Yeah, I know in the old days, Peter Darvill Evans, who used to edit the Virgin books, did say if he received another script that started on a big, empty, abandoned space station, he would scream. And this does start on a big, empty, apparently abandoned space station. But it really works. And the minute that Lucy describes the place as looking a bit like Coventry, you get it. You just know what it looks like. It's fun, it's funny, it's moving, it's got incredible pace, it's got heart, which some stories could be accused of missing. Yes, it's got a whole Robo-Hunter 2000 AD feel to it, but no one's pretending it doesn't, and when Doctor Who lifts stories from other places, we really have been known to let it off quite well. This story also contains a robot reading some poetry, and the Doctor says, "I've never heard of a robot who can read poetry." Well, we have. We know Marvin, and the guy who played Marvin, Stephen Moore, who plays in the next story, The 8 Truths. The 8 Truths is actually released 3.7 and 3.8, thus making up a 2 CD set, or a 4-part story. And again, we have a return to classic villains. This is great. The series has been split almost perfectly in two, with reusable old-school villains that we all know and can identify with, and brand new school villains in, well, reimagined ways. Unfortunately, you can't really talk about a story called The 8 Truths, or the World Wide Web, without giving away kind of, well, who the villains are. Now, this is a romp, and I know the word romp gets applied to far too much Doctor Who, but there's running around, there's high-speed investigation. It has the feel almost of a modern TV story, rather than the slightly slower pace seen in other stories. As always, Sheridan's performance has been exemplary. She is an absolutely perfect piece of casting. Whoever chose her, whoever managed to get her, my hat is completely off to you. This story was apparently set in 2012 on one of the first read-throughs, but after listening to the audio, I'm sure it's 2015. Much debate on forums has rung out about the importance of 2012, and I personally don't think there is any. It makes much more sense for it to be set way after an Olympic event, so that just doesn't get in the way of the plots. This has been a fantastic season. The 8th Doctor and Lucy partnership really needs to go on from this. I'm massively looking forward to Season 4. Before I leave you for this week, I just want to remind you that you can support the Tin Dog podcast by buying a personalised Whostrology certificate rather than just donating. Take a trip over to eBay, type in Whostrology, that's WHOSTROLOGY, and buy yourself a personalised reading that comes to your house in a nice hardback do not bend envelope and is written specifically for you. Graham James Brown, born on the 4th of July 1972, did just that. He was born in the time of the 3rd Doctor, with Grant in the Ascendant and Unit in your quarter. The stories shown on his birthday were a little bit difficult to sort out. He was born between season 9 and 10, between the Time Monster and the 3 Doctors, on the anniversary of the day that the Censorites episode 3 was to be shown, but was in fact delayed due to grandstand. Here's his reading. Life is no longer a load of tom tit. You will be the master of your vehicle very soon. Consider doing a job for your oldest friends in exchange for your driving licence and an invitation to a family reunion. remember that one reason to grow old is simply to accumulate wisdom. While visiting, it is important to remember not to drink the water. Remember, the greatest treasure of all is freedom. And I think that's quite fitting. If you'd like your own, head over to eBay now, and I'll get right on the case. So until next time, when we'll be talking about the wonderment that truly is the war games, be seeing you. You have been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all trademark of the BBC. No infringement is intended. Contact us at tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk.